everybody. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us for ILTV's weekly program, One-on-One with Alan Dershowitz. We want to give you, our viewers, a chance to have your questions answered by Professor Dershowitz, one of America's greatest legal minds. He's a leading expert on criminal and constitutional law, civil liberties, and the Arab-Israeli conflict. For the past 2 weeks, we've been showing you highlights of Professor Dershowitz's recent visit to Israel. Today's program was supposed to complete the trilogy, but after the dramatic passage of a UN resolution against Israeli settlements, we wanted to hear from Professor Dershowitz in real time. Hi, Professor. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right, so to begin, let's get started. Professor, as you know, every week we open our show with a special guest. Today, we're honored to have former Director General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Israel's former ambassador to the United Nations, Dori Gold. Today, Dr. Gold heads the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs and fittingly wants to talk about the United Nations.
Alan, a lot has happened since I saw you last in Jerusalem, and, it's hard to keep up with events. The UN Security Council adopted a resolution that was supposed to just be about settlements, but basically set a whole new pattern for the relations between Israel and the Palestinians. For what this resolution does is it creates a precedent that every time Israel and the Palestinians will have a disagreement over how to solve borders, refugees, Jerusalem, any of the issues of permanent status, why not do what they did with settlements? Run to the Security Council and get the Security Council to intervene. And unfortunately, the members of the Security Council will gladly take a position thinking that will improve their stature and status in the Arab world and throughout the Middle East. What do you think? Do you think this resolution has any value whatsoever, or it's the disaster that I certainly think it has become?
Well, Dori, thank you so much. And it was great being with you in Jerusalem and sharing the podium together. And you're right, many things have changed. I think the one word that I could use to describe this resolution is dumb. It's a dumb resolution. If it had just limited itself to complaining about Israel's expansion of West Bank settlements, it still would have been somewhat controversial, but it wouldn't have engendered the kind of outrage that it has engendered across the board. And this is not, Israel versus the United States. This is Obama versus Israel. All Israelis agree in condemning this resolution, and virtually all Americans do, Democrats and Republicans alike. And part of the reason is because it goes beyond the West Bank settlements, and certainly goes beyond the West Bank settlements that are unlawful and the subject of the Amona debate. If you read this resolution, it says that the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem is occupied territory, and that the Jews who went back to the Jewish quarter after having been militarily removed from it when Jordan joined an exterminationist war against Israel in 1948 and made the Jewish quarter Judenrein and turned gravestones into urinals. The idea that returning Jews to the Jewish quarter somehow is in violation of international law, or allowing Jews to use the access roads to go to Hebrew University on Mount Scopus or Hadassah Hospital, or allowing Jews to pray at the Kotel, somehow that's in violation of international law, made this resolution a laughing stock of any thoughtful people. And it was so unnecessary. But Ben Rhodes explained why it was done. It was not an accident. He explained that this was an attempt to punish Israel for what is not clear. But that was the goal and the motive, and it will set back the peace process considerably. It's also extremely undemocratic for a president who's on the way out to pick a time when their Congress is out of session, when there are no political elections coming, and when he can tie the hands of the incoming president who was elected legitimately. And, you can't undo a Security Council resolution, because even if you get a majority to rescind it, there will be the veto by China or Russia or some other country, maybe New Zealand now. New Zealand, the country which is clearly a colonialist project. New Zealand itself was built by settlers from England who came and got rid of all the Maoris, ethnically cleansed them, and built a country at about the same time that Israel was being established. The first Aliyah coincides with the time that New Zealand became a colonialist place. And for New Zealand to lead the campaign against Israeli settlements is the height of hypocrisy. But hypocrisy has a home. It's called the United Nations. And so nobody should be surprised. But this will make the peace process more difficult to achieve. It will cement Obama's reputation as one of the worst foreign policy presidents in modern history. What he did with the Iran deal, what he did with turning Iraq over to Iran, what he did with Syria, failing to comply with his red line, opening it up to Russia, turning against almost all of America's friends, and supporting America's enemies. He will go down in history akin to Chamberlain, a great domestic foreign prime minister Chamberlain was, and a great domestic president Obama has been, but a disaster when it comes to foreign policy. And the real victims of this are going to be the Palestinian people, because it gives them false hope that they can get a state through the United Nations or through the International Criminal Court or through the BDS movement. And of course, the only way they'll ever get a state is to sit down and negotiate with the Israelis. And they're not inclined to do that now because they've gotten so much of what they wanted without any negotiation. And it sends a false message that they can get a state without further negotiation and painful compromises. So it's a disaster all around. But I think the word dumb is probably what best characterizes it. Just dumb. It could have been done in a smart way. But when you act out of passion and emotion instead of rationality and policy, you're apt to do dumb things. And Obama did a very dumb thing.
Thanks, Professor Dershowitz. Now, I have some questions of myself for you. The first one being, what is your response to the Israeli Prime Minister's decision to withdraw from activity with some of the countries that supported this resolution, like Angola as one example, or Senegal?
Well, I think countries have to express their own national interests. And I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu did the right thing by telling countries that vote foolishly against Israel in a knee-jerk way that they will pay a price for it. It may not be a deep price, but it will be a price. And I think it was right to call in the ambassadors from the Ukraine and other countries and to tell them that you don't get a free vote against the nation state of the Jewish people, against the only democracy in the Middle East. I think Prime Minister Netanyahu has done the right thing to stand up against the bigots at the United Nations who apply a double standard. The very day that they mustered this 14-0 majority with an uncourageous abstention by the United States, they couldn't muster a majority to condemn what's going on in the South Sudan, where children are being subjected to genocide and murder and mass killings. But the United Nations can't get a majority against Syria. They can't get it against Russia. They can't get it against China for occupying Tibet. They can't get it against all the other countries in the world that engage in massive human rights violations. But the automatic majority against Israel, I think it was Abiy Ibn who said something like, if Algeria introduced a resolution that the world was flat and that Israel flattened it, it would win 123-61 with 42 abstentions. There's an automatic vote against Israel at the United Nations, and that's why the UN resolutions cannot be taken seriously by anybody who is a serious scholar or seriously concerned with the rule of law.
All right. Now, on a personal level, you were involved in helping to frame the landmark Security Council Resolution 242, which has served as the basis for all discussions about Israel making peace with its neighbors. You know better than anyone how careful you were about every word. Can you speak about why everyone was so careful about their wording in this resolution and compare it to this new resolution?
Well, I was fortunate to have been a law clerk to Justice Arthur Goldberg, and when 242 was being considered, he asked me to come and stay with him at his home at the United Nations and help with the drafting of 242. I played a very, very small role, but I sure was a witness to history. And plainly, 242 contemplated that Israel could make territorial adjustments. It could eliminate what Abiy Ibn had called the Auschwitz lines, the terrible borders that made Israel vulnerable to attack. It could certainly change the latrine corridor and could certainly, without any doubt, move back into the Jewish quarter, create a prayer plaza in front of the Kotel, open the access roads to Hebrew University and to Hadassah Hospital, inhabit places like French Hill. That was all contemplated by the British ambassador who said so, the United States ambassador. There was a big fight about whether the word territory should have a word the before it. In France, in French, you can't have a word territory without a le before it. But then Goldberg came up with the compromise that the English language will dominate. So the word territories is in there, indicating that Israel should return territories. But by the way, under 242, Israel doesn't have to return a single inch of territory unless and until the other side recognizes it and makes peace. That's why Israel returned territory to Jordan and to Egypt, because there was peace. But under 242, it is not obligated to return a single inch of territory to the Palestinians. First of all, they're not the people to be returned to. It was the Jordanians who gave up the territory when they attacked Israel. But there was no obligation to return it to Jordan unless Jordan made peace. And now Jordan has given up that territory and it's given over to the Palestinians, who have refused to make peace. So 242 is very carefully enacted. And there's a direct conflict between 242 and this most recent resolution. And the question is, if you're interpreting these two resolutions in tandem, which one dominates? One says that Israel can build areas in Jerusalem, in the Jewish quarter and around there, and the other seems to say it can't. So you have a direct conflict resulting from very poor draftsmanship and a rush to judgment. There was no reason to have to do this thing on Friday when it was Shabbat already in Israel. It was Erev Hanukkah. And the idea that it was passed at a time when the Israeli authorities couldn't even respond because of Shabbat showed that it was really a rush, and there was no reason to rush. They could have considered it more carefully. The United States could have exercised its veto and said, bring it back to us when the language is more carefully crafted. And now, of course, we have a very bad resolution on the books that's impossible to undo because of the continuing veto power of Russia and China. So it's a lose-lose all around, a loss for the Palestinian people, a loss for Israel, a loss for American standing, a loss for the United Nations.
Do you think former Harvard Law students of yours like Samantha Power and Barack Obama might have been more careful or paid more attention to the importance of the wording? I mean, how could they have done that?
Well, it's shocking to me. I actually read Samantha Power, who was my student, and I like her very much personally. I read her speech as having originally been drafted as a veto speech. She spends more time describing why the UN is not an appropriate place for a resolution of this kind, and then kind of, it looks like a last-minute change, justifies why the United States will abstain. It seems to me, on the basis of the words, that she was ordered at the last minute to change her speech from a veto speech to an abstention speech. But you would think that, at the very least, she and Obama could have worked together to get language that reflected what they say they wanted. That is, condemnation of continued expansion of settlements deep in the West Bank, instead of condemning Israel for building a prayer plaza and building synagogues in the Jewish quarter and allowing access to Hebrew University in Hadassah. That is just so dumb. Again, that's the word that comes to mind immediately. And there's no excuse for being dumb when it involves the lives and welfare of so many people.
Now, we have 3 weeks left until President Obama leaves office, as we all know. Are you afraid that there will be more UN resolutions that he will not veto?
Well, there's that concern. John Kerry is going to make a speech. Nobody will listen because the speech is made by an administration that has lost all of its credibility when it comes to Israel. And nobody cares what John Kerry says in his speech or even what Obama says, because they're going to be out of office in a short period of time. The only fear is another unrevocable Security Council resolution. And I think the world would see any such effort by the United States as a clear provocation, clear reaction in anger. And that's not the way great countries should operate.
Thanks, Professor, for joining us. Now, as promised, we're going to go back and show some of the highlights of Professor Dershowitz's appearance at the Globe's business conference in Israel, where he was interviewed by CNN senior correspondent Richard Quest.
How many of you in this room, hands up, believe that the president-elect's son-in-law could actually be a conduit to peace between Israel and the Palestinians? There's one lady at the back, but she might have been ordering coffee. How many of you believe that it was an irresponsible statement to make off the cuff? Go on, Alan, run with it.
Well, you know, I know his son-in-law was a student at Harvard and in Chabad when I was the faculty advisor.
So he's one of yours?
He's a young man with no experience in the Middle East.
It's never stopped others.
It's never stopped others. Look, I would welcome his intervention if he could do it, but he has no credibility among the Palestinians and not very well known among the Israelis. Let him try. Welcome. But I don't anticipate that there's going to be any major breakthrough because he has a son-in-law who's Jewish.
Okay, but was it...
By the way, everybody has a son-in-law who's Jewish in the United States.
But, Alan, you've got a President Trump who has said nice things about Vladimir Putin during the campaign, but Putin may come to regret Trump's friendship if it seems to conflict with an America First policy. How do you interpret America First?
Well, it's a slogan, and Donald Trump is a master sloganeer.
You say it's a slogan.
Yeah.
Is it not? Is it not a policy?
I don't think so. I don't think Trump has policies yet. I think he has slogans and he has objects, but I don't think he has thought through very careful policies. And if you look at who he's appointed in his cabinet, it's very hard to discern a general overarching policy. And what I think we need from the United States at this point is stability. We're seeing incredible growth of instability around the world. We've been focusing on the superpowers, but if one looks a little bit at some of the secondary powers in the world, we see unpredictability, instability, the rise of populism, the rise of extremism in Hungary, in Poland, in Greece, perhaps in France, in the Labour Party, in England. And I think that the president, in the end, will be forced to become a stabilizing force in a world of growing instability, because America needs stability in the world. America benefits from a stable world. And I think in the end, Trump will realize that, and that will have to figure into whatever his policies are.
Europe, irrelevant. Alan?
I don't think Europe is ever irrelevant. I do think that Europe is even more unpredictable than the United States. Oh. We see Italy, we see France, we see England. Look, England was very unpredictable in Brexit, but it turned it around. It really turned it around. It showed what a stable country it was by who it put in office and how it responded to Brexit. We now have a court case in England, which is going to have an impact on this. It really shows that a strong democracy can survive unpredictability.
How many of you are worried about a Donald Trump presidency? Hang on a second. Hang on. Why?
The policies that he stated, in as far as he can follow any of them, in as far as any of them is actually a policy, are simply, plainly very bad.
He doesn't like Donald Trump. No. Who else put their hand up?
The people he appoints worries me more than Donald Trump himself.
Good. I mean, not good. I mean, thank you. Who else?
Donald Trump is going to be a great president because we compare things. Wait, hold on with that. We had unrealistic expectations from Obama, correct? Nobody could make it. Now, from Donald Trump, we don't expect anything. So he's going to be a great president. Take it easy.
Oh, I don't agree. It's not for me to say whether he'll be great or not, but I think people do have expectations. They're just not that high. And they're all good.
Well, how quickly do you think the Nobel Prize Committee is going to give Donald Trump the Nobel Peace Prize? I mean, talk about the most idiotic group in the world. It's the Nobel Peace Committee giving Obama the Nobel Peace Prize days after he got elected and raising expectations. Just unbelievable.
All right, Alan, it was great having you at Globes. And of course, here in Israel, we had a lovely time together going to dinner.
Well, thank you so much for introducing me to your fiance's fantastic restaurant, Sheila. I had such great food, and I'm still drinking the wine, the Cave wine, one of the best Israeli wines I've ever had. So thank you for introducing me.
Well, we have another bottle on the way to you in New York.
Oh, I can't wait. Thank you.
That's all the time we have for today. I'd like to say thank you to our special guest, Ambassador Dory Gold. If you'd like Professor Dershowitz to answer your questions, go to iltv.tv or our Facebook page and submit them. We'll see you again next week.